Hey, this is David Cashman with SEB Housing. This is going to be the info session for the affordable units at the Buckley in Framingham. Just getting one last thing set up here, and then we'll get started. So just hold tight for a minute while I get these other things set up. You can hear it.
Welcome. This service is provided by freeconferencecall.com. Please enter your access code followed by the pound or hash sign.
Brian, are you on there right now?
If you are the
Will you
host,
sign off for a
press
second?
star
I want to
now.
see something.
Otherwise, please wait, and you please enter your PIN followed by the pound or hash. Thank you. You are the only participant in the conference.
Okay. It looks like there's one, but I can't tell if that's you or someone else. But either way, let's see. It just shows me one person. Just curious if there is someone else watching this. Maybe you could just write me a quick line. Type in the dialog box to the right of the screen where you see me. You can write anything. Just trying to figure out if there's anyone there who I'm speaking with who can ask questions as we go along, or if this will just be something that people can queue into later as it gets saved. So if there is someone there, do me a favor if you would. Alicia, hi, how are you? Okay. So how did you, just out of curiosity, where did you find out that we were live streaming this? Did you see it at the library or on our website, Alicia? No, you can keep typing, Alicia. I can read what you're saying, and that's perfectly fine. Great, so you found it on the website. Awesome. We were just able to get that up yesterday. So great. Thanks for attending. Yeah, these are, I don't know, Alicia, if you've looked online, but I was spent a little time looking myself recently. The apartments look beautiful. The amenities look really nice. So this definitely looks like a great new property and one to be excited about. So let me just, I don't know if you've been able to access the information packet and application, but what I think we'll do this evening is just go through some of the sort of broader details, what to expect, how to apply, what the eligibility requirements are. If you have any questions at any time, feel free to type them in and I will answer them. If you have questions later on, you can always get in touch with us. We'll be happy to help you. Those are best addressed to info@sebhousing.com. Again, that's info@sebhousing.com. You can also email me, david@sebhousing.com. Just a quick note, we are still open and running business. Obviously, things are impacted by the outbreak of coronavirus. We are hoping we'll still be able to come into the office periodically to receive documents, although if you send anything that needs to be signed for or needs to be delivered in hand, that could be tricky because we're running kind of a skeleton crew here and people may not be in at all later this week and early next week. So if you're able to, when you apply, best thing to do right now is to scan and email. You can scan your documents and email them to info@SEB Housing. That's going to be the best way right now to get us documentation. If you have to mail it, as long as it doesn't need to be signed for, we should be able to get it. And it may just take a little bit longer. And obviously, if you are someone who moves forward in this process, things are unfolding rapidly with coronavirus. We don't know where we'll be in a week or a month, or what that will mean exactly when it comes time to lease an actual unit. But we'll obviously stay in touch with anyone who's in the lottery to let you know what to expect going forward. It looks like there is another person that's joined too. So just in case you weren't here right at the start, my name is David Cashman. I'm with SEB Housing. We're the affordable housing lottery agent for these units. We're not the management team. We're not the developer, but we do get hired by the development team to help run a lottery for interested households. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to type them in to the right of where you see the screen with me in it, and I'm happy to address those right now as we go along. Hope this is for you, and so totally happy to have you ask questions. Just make sure to type them in the box to the right of where you see me and not below. Below is sort of like the comment section, and I can't see them. So if you're typing below me where you see me in the screen, I won't see it. So let's talk a little bit about this program, what this opportunity is. It's an affordable housing program built. These units are being built under a special permit that was issued by Framingham. Affordable does not mean that the rents are tied to your income. It doesn't mean that they're Section 8. It means that they are restricted to people who are under a certain income limit, and that the rents are less than what they would be on the open market. But those rents are not tied to your particular financial situation. They are tied to numbers that are published by HUD that come out once every year in April. And the expectation is, or the requirement of the program is that you, on the one hand, don't make too much money, so you're underneath this income limit, but at the same time that you have the income or assets to be able to afford the rent, so that you're above kind of this minimum threshold and are someone who will be able to support the rent on their own each month. There are going to be 210 total units at the Buckley, 21 of which will be made available through this opportunity. To be eligible, you can't make more than 80% of the area median income. And we'll talk in a moment about what those specific numbers are. Just to give you a quick sense, and I don't know if you have the info packet in front of you, but if you do, I'm just looking at the third page here. There's 21 total affordable units being made available through this opportunity in a mix of studio, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms. There are 2 studio units going to be made available, 8 1-bedroom units, 10 2-bedroom units, and 1 3-bedroom units. A number of these units are built out for persons with mobility impairments, and people who have a demonstrated mobility impairment will get priority for those units, so designated, above people who do not. 1-bedroom studios and 1-bedrooms each have 1 bathroom. The 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom have 2 bathrooms. The info packet, I see this question, Alicia, if you go on our website, so if you go to www.sebhousing.com, let me just type that in as I'm doing it so that I can walk you through. So www.sebhousing.com should take you to our homepage. At the top, hopefully you're seeing home, affordable housing opportunities, about us, contact us. Click on affordable housing opportunities. In the big black bar, you'll see I want to rent. It should already be on I want to rent. So just scroll down. In the left-hand side column, you'll see Trio Newton, and right below that is Framingham Buckley. Click on Framingham Buckley. That'll bring you to its page. Scroll down on that page. You'll see in big bold it says Important Documents, and you can click on Info Packet. So I'm going to just wait a sec here, Alicia, and maybe you can respond and let me know if you were able to access that. So again, www.sebhousing.com, affordable housing opportunities. Click on I want to rent, and then second one down on the left, Framingham Buckley. Scroll down once you get there, and you'll see the info packet. Okay. So Alicia, I see you're trying. I'm going to keep going here, but if you're not able to get it, let me know, and I'll circle back around with you and see if I can help you find it. So I was giving you a little bit of the background on what the different units are that are being made available through this opportunity. And you can see in that chart, if you have the information packet in front of you, what the rents are. Again, I mentioned at the beginning, rents are not tied to your particular income. They're tied to numbers that HUD publishes every year in April. Great, you got it. That's awesome. So again, looking at page 3 there, Alicia, the rent for a studio unit is $13.95. 1 bedroom is $15.61. 2 bedroom, $17.08, and 3 bedroom is $18.53. In addition to that, it's important that you realize that those rents do not include gas, which is heating and hot water, electricity, cooking is electric, water and sewer. So the actual monthly rent will be higher than what you see there. And obviously that will just, how much higher will just depend on how much you use of those utilities. Pets are allowed at this development. Smoking is not. One of the nice things about this program is that all 21 of these units have already been pre-designated and approved by both the city and the state. These units are indistinguishable from the outside from all of the other units at the development. They're not clustered together. They're not all stacked one on top of each other. Rather, they're interspersed throughout the development such that someone walking down the hallway would have no idea which particular unit was being rented at market rate rents and which particular unit was being rented at these reduced rents. So they are not by any means the least desirable. They're not all packed in one corner. They're not all identifiable as such to the an onlooker, which is again I think it's a great feature of the program. They're interspersed equally, and that's an important goal of this program, is to have these units that are quite similar to the market rate units on site, with the same access to the amenities that they will have at the development. Another nice thing to know, and we'll talk again shortly about what the income limits are, but oftentimes people wonder if they are able to move forward in this process. There's a buffer that allows you to remain eligible even if your income goes up once you're in a unit. So if you are able to move forward and you do end up leasing a unit at the Buckley, every year you have to recertify, demonstrating that you're still eligible for the program, i.e. you didn't win the lottery and now you're, way over the income limits. But usually once you've certified once, then that yearly review is quite a bit easier. But again, you can make up to 140% of what you could initially make to qualify to initially get into a unit when you recertify. So we'll talk about what those numbers actually are a little bit later on, but for now, point is, once you're in a unit, you have to recertify each year, and when you recertify, you'll be able to make quite a bit more money and still be eligible for the program. Let's talk about what the actual income limits are. Framingham is in the Boston, Cambridge, Quincy area that HUD specifies. The income limit for a household size of 1 is a little over $62,000. For a household size of 2, it's $71,400. Household size of 3 is $80,300. 4 is $89,200. 5 is $96,350. And a household size of 6 is $103,500. Those are the income limits based on the number of people that will be on the lease or living in the unit. The rents are tied to the number of bedrooms, not to the number of people. So, a household size of 2 who's renting a 2-bedroom apartment is going to be paying the same 2-bedroom rent as a household size of 3. It's just that who's renting a 2-bedroom apartment, it's just that a household size of 3 is able to make up to $80,300, whereas a household size of 2 is only able to make up to $71,400 to be eligible. When we're talking about income, and we could talk for a long time about income, but income is, we are required to count income rather expansively through this program. We don't make the rules. We just have to follow the rules as they're given to us. And I can tell you now that income in this program is broad, and it includes some things that that people don't always think of as income. So, for example, Social Security, that's an income source. Alimony, child support, those are income sources. Overtime pay or bonuses, those are income sources. If you're getting periodic payments, you have a parent or a benefactor who gives you a check for $500 a month or whatever it is on a recurring basis, that's income. Unemployment, that's income. So again, there are some exceptions to what we count as income. For children who are going to live in the unit who are under the age of 18, they don't count, and full-time students who are dependents, only up to $480 that they make is counted. But other than that, pretty much all income counts. And when we're looking at income, we're making a projection of what you're going to make over the next 12 months, which factors in what you have made previously. As oftentimes what you've made in the last couple of months is the best source of information that we have to determine what you're likely to make over the next 12 months. So what that means in practice is if you've made $80,000 last year and you say this year you're only going to make $50,000, chances are we can't just take that at face value. There would have to be strong evidence showing why your income is going to go down so much. So again, when we're talking about income limits in this program, we're looking at 12 months down the road, and we're factoring in what you have made in the last several months, as well as any evidence of what you're likely to make over the next 12 months. So that's a bit about income. I should also say that there's a section on page 5 of the info pack you can see that's titled minimum income. I want to make a point about this. This program doesn't have a minimum income limit. However, as I said at the beginning, you do need to be able to support the rent on your own. So just by way of example, if you made $10,000 a year and didn't have a voucher or some other source of support, 10,000 would be well below those income limits that we talked about. You would be program eligible based on your income. But if you only made $10,000 a year, you wouldn't be able to support the rent at that amount. Again, if you don't have a voucher or some kind of support. So the leasing office requires all tenants to make at least 2.5 times the monthly rent. That's their sort of screening criteria to make sure that you're going to be able to afford the rent each month. And so what that looks like based on the different unit sizes is, and again, these are rough, a studio unit's going to be close to $42,000. So in other words, you're going to have to make about $42,000 to show that you can support the studio rent. You're going to have to make about $47,000 to support a one-bedroom rent, $51,000 to support two-bedroom rent, and $55,000, roughly $600 to support the three-bedroom rent. Again, we look at both your income and your assets to get an idea if you're going to make enough money to support the rent. And again, this is not a program requirement. It is something that we screen for on behalf of the leasing office because it really does you no service or anyone any service to go through this whole process if at the end of the day, the leasing office is going to tell you that you don't make enough money to support the rent. So again, not a program requirement. Therefore, we don't screen for it as closely as we do screen for those maximum limits, but we do still look for it because it's no service to you to have you move forward if you aren't going to be able to support the rent. But we do look at this much more loosely than we do look at the maximum income limits. I should also say that the minimum incomes don't apply if you have a voucher or some other rental assistance. So if that applies to you, we are not screening you out for having insufficient income. We do also have to ask for and take a look at your assets. Assets under the program, also like income, defined fairly expansively. And when you fill out the application, you're going to have to list all the different assets that you own. So some of the more common ones would be things like your checking account or your savings account, if you have those. But it could also be like a retirement account or property. There's no asset limit, so there's really not much to gain from trying to play down what you have in assets or omit certain assets. We do have to look at the income that's generated from those assets, and we add that income to the income limit that we previously talked about to see if it kicks you up and above the income limits. But that's pretty rare. That really doesn't happen very often. Again, list all your assets, list the income that those assets generates, and we will factor in whether or not that income puts you over the income limit, but really that is not something that happens very often. When you apply, one of the most important things really is get your application in early. We are required by the program to ask for a lot of documentation. If you haven't looked at the application yet, when you do, you will see that we ask for a lot. And again, that's not to be difficult. That's what the program requires to certify you as eligible for this program. The vast majority of people do not submit a 100% complete application on the first try or even the second try. And that's owing to the fact that there is a lot that's required, but it's also owing to the fact that sometimes you submit a certain piece of documentation and that raises questions, and we might need to ask for additional documentation. Just by way of quick example, maybe you're required to submit bank statements. If you have all these deposits in there that we can't tie to a job or something, we may have to ask questions about where those come from. And this happens all the time. So point is, get your application in early. If it's not complete, we will let you know. we can go back and forth with you until it is complete. But you really don't want to wait till the very end to submit it, because I'm telling you now, in the vast majority of cases, people do not get a 100% complete application on the first try, and you don't want to be up against that deadline, scrambling around trying to get the documents you need. Now, I will also say on that front, given what's going on with coronavirus and everything, and all that is happening around this pandemic, we realize that getting certain documents may be quite difficult or even impossible at this time. We understand that. If that's the case, we'll work with you. But we do ask you to complete the application to the best of your ability right now. And if there are certain documents that you simply cannot get because the business is closed or whatever the case may be, we will absolutely work with you. And we should be able to, I hope, grant exemptions or exceptions if that is the case, because we understand that these are very unusual times. So submit your application early. We'll work with you. If you have questions, you can ask us. We'll give you very specific lists of any things that are missing from your applications, so you know exactly what you need to get. When you submit a completed application, and if you're eligible, we'll let you know, and we'll give you a lottery number. That number will be in the form of A.3 numbers. So let's just, A002 or A005 or whatever the number is. Those are merely anonymous identifiers. They have absolutely no bearing on anything in the lottery, other than they don't dictate your order. They merely reflect the order that we received applications and are meant to keep everyone's name anonymous. Getting your application, being the first person to submit a completed eligible application doesn't mean that you get first pick in the lottery. But if you don't have a number, that's an indication that you haven't been deemed eligible. And if the deadline is coming up and you don't know what your number is, you should definitely reach out to us to find out where things stand, because you do need a lottery application number to be entered into the lottery. So let's just fast forward for a sec. You've submitted your application. You get it in early because you don't want to be scrambling at the last minute trying to get documentation. You get your lottery application number, and on the evening of the lottery, which may very well also be by YouTube stream, we'll see, we will put all of the lottery application numbers in a box, and we'll have two drawings. There will be a drawing for households who are local preference. Those are households who live in Framingham, work in Framingham, or have kids who attend the Framingham schools. And then we'll also have a general drawing, which will include those households and everyone else who wasn't a local preference household. The order that we draw the numbers doesn't mean, or is not necessarily indicative of the order that households will get to move forward in applying for leases and selecting units. And the reason for that is because there are different priorities that this program makes us apply. So this lottery is really quite different than most lotteries that we typically think of. There aren't winners, there aren't losers. We don't just select a certain number of households and everyone else, it's too bad. Rather, every single person who is given a lottery number will be picked. Every single person who is picked will get a spot on a waiting list. Those waiting lists will determine the order that households get to move forward in applying for units. And that is a process that's going to happen with the leasing office. Let's talk for just a sec. When you apply, you'll see on one of the very first pages of the application, you can check off which units you would like to apply for. You can apply for one type of unit, two types of units, three types, or all four types. There's absolutely no detriment or disadvantage to applying for more than one bedroom size. So for example, if you think, hey, I could be happy in a studio and I could be happy in a one bedroom, then apply for both. Because then you can get on the waiting list for both the studio and the one bedroom. And at some point, you may have to make a decision about which one you prefer. But if you don't apply for a studio and you only apply for a one bedroom, then you won't be on the studio list. And so if you have any inkling that you might want a studio or would be happy there, you don't do yourself any favors by not um, um, applying for both. I'm sorry, I just saw this question come in. I'm not aware, Alicia, of the question is any of the affordable units have lofts. I'm not aware that they do. I can follow up with the management team and if you want to, tell you what, why don't you send me an email at david@SEB Housing, and I can get back to you on that. I'm not aware that they do, but I would have to check with the management team to say for sure. So send me that question in an email if you don't mind, david@sebhousing.com, and I will get back to you on that. Sorry, I don't know. So I was just saying before that, you can apply for as many units, studio, one bedroom, two bedroom, three bedroom, as you want, and there's really no downside to doing so. You will be on a waiting list for every unit type that you apply for, and maybe you have a great spot on the one bedroom list and not as good of a spot on the two bedroom list. As I said before, the order that we draw those numbers in the lottery is not necessarily indicative of the order that households will get to move forward, and that's because there are priorities that we have to implement. So just by way of example, for a two-bedroom unit, when you complete an application, you have to list the household type that you are. There are three types. There's type 1 households, type 2 households, and type 3 households. Basically, what those mean is a type 1 household is a household who only really needs one bedroom. So that might be a single person or a couple. A type 2 household is a household who really kind of needs two bedrooms. So maybe that's a couple and a child. And a type 3 household is a household who needs three bedrooms. So that might be a couple with two children. The program requires that a type 3 household get priority over all type 2 and type 1 households for a three-bedroom unit, because a type 3 household needs three bedrooms and a type 1 household doesn't need three bedrooms. They might like three bedrooms, but they don't need three bedrooms. So in the lottery, let's just say, for example, a type 1 household had applied for a three-bedroom unit, and we draw that type 1 household first out of the box. Even if several type 3 households are drawn later on, they'll leapfrog that type 1 household because they're on the three-bedroom list, because they have a priority for a three-bedroom unit over the type 1 household. But the type 3 household wouldn't leapfrog the type 1 household for a one-bedroom unit or a studio unit, because relative to the type 3 household, the type 1 household is in just as much need of a studio unit or a one-bedroom unit. So just something to keep in mind. At the lottery, we'll draw the numbers, but when we draw them, you can't tell right away what exactly that drawing means in terms of next steps, because there are these different priorities that we have to implement. I just gave you an example of the different household types and how that can impact it. The night of the lottery, we will do the sorting that's required, and we will generate the waiting lists. Those waiting lists will have your application numbers, and we will send those out to you the night of the lottery. Those lists that we send out will show you exactly the order that you're in, and that's the order that will determine when you get to move forward in applying for a lease. So if you're in the lottery, you get on the waiting list, that's great. You've taken a big step, and chances are, I think there's a very, very high likelihood that if you're in the lottery, you will get an opportunity to reserve a unit. So there's I can't promise, but I think that if you do the work now and you get in the lottery, I think there's a very, very good chance that you will have the opportunity to lease a unit. The next step after the lottery is we'll put you in contact with the leasing office, and then you will start to arrange the leasing office going in, looking at available units and selecting the unit that you want. When it's your turn to go in and apply for a lease, you can select from any of the available units, even if it's not the first units that's ready. So you may, a lot of times at developments, units aren't all ready at exactly the same time. You may say, hey, it actually works better for me to lease this unit that's not going to be ready for 3 months or 5 months or whatever the case may be. That's absolutely your prerogative. When your turn is up, you can select from any of the available units, regardless when those units are available. And then once you've reserved that unit, the household behind you could select from any of the units that are still available after you've reserved yours. We have screened you at this point. At that point, if you're in the lottery, we've determined that you're program eligible. Program eligible is not the same thing as being lease eligible. They're different criteria. So you may be absolutely program eligible, but it's possible, maybe you have some disqualifying factor for a lease. Those, I don't know exactly all the lease screening criteria, but just as an example only, maybe your credit is quite poor. Maybe it doesn't meet the leasing office's standards for credit. And so you could get screened out on that basis. I certainly hope that doesn't happen to anyone, but it's important to be aware that being eligible for the program and being in the lottery is not the same as being lease eligible. And so that's just something to be aware of as you move forward. If you know, just for example, if you're someone that knows, that your credit is quite poor, that could potentially down the road disqualify you from leasing a unit. That's not something that we SEB Housing look at. We'll never ask for it. It has absolutely nothing to do with being eligible for the program, but it is something that would come up later if you were trying to lease a unit. So please keep that in mind. I talked a little bit about the waiting lists. Again, there are going to be a number of different waiting lists because there are a number of different types of units at the development. I'm just looking now at page 16 of the information packet. I had talked a little bit at the beginning about if you do get a unit, having to recertify each year, and how at recertification in years 2, 3, 4, and down the road, you can make more money and still be eligible for the program. Just to give you an example, if you're a household size of 1 applying for the program today, you can make up to $62,450, but anything above that, you would not be eligible. However, if you were recertifying today as a household size of 1, you could make up to $87,430. So almost exactly a $25,000 increase. So there is a nice cushion there that you don't have to worry that if you get into one of these units, that if you want, if your boss offers you a raise or something like that, that's going to make you necessarily ineligible. There is some room built in there. We talked a little bit about household size being a factor that could give you priority for certain units, really just the bigger units, the 2 bedrooms and 3 bedroom units. Another thing that factors in is if you're a local preference household. Those are households who live in Framingham, work in Framingham, or have kids attending the Framingham schools. The local preference gives you priority relative to households of the same type in the lottery, but only for some of the units, not all of the units. So even if you don't live in Framingham, you absolutely can and should still apply. And the fact that you may not be a local preference household does not mean that you don't still have a good chance of being able to rent a unit through this process. Similarly, if you are a local preference household, being able to meet 2 or 3 or even 4 of the local preference criteria doesn't elevate you above someone who just meets one of those criteria. So just as an example, someone who lives and works in Framingham doesn't get priority over someone who just lives in Framingham. If you just meet one of those criteria of local preference, then that's enough, and meeting several doesn't give you an added benefit. So that's kind of a general overview. It can be helpful. Maybe I should have said this at the beginning. Think of it as a 2-step process. The first step is get your application in early and be qualified for the lottery. And then the second part is, if you're in the lottery, you'll get a position on a waiting list. And from those waiting lists, you will be able to move forward in applying for a lease. I guess I should say that, at that time, you will probably have, may be impacted somewhat by what happens with coronavirus, but in the usual case, if you are on the waiting list and you're being invited to move forward, there are usually some deadlines that will be given to you to move forward, because obviously, there are households behind you who are waiting for you to reserve a unit before they can move forward. So it wouldn't be fair to them. If a household with a top spot on the waiting list was given 2 months to reserve a unit while all these households behind them are waiting anxiously. So getting a position on the waiting list isn't the end of the process. You have to still qualify for a lease, and you have to meet the deadlines that are given to you by the leasing office. Usually it's a week to come in and look at a place and look at the available apartments and reserve them. Again, that's something that you'll work out with them, but it's just important to know that for after the lottery, that you do have to kind of keep the ball moving, so that households behind you can also move forward. But again, when your turn comes up, you can reserve any of the available units, even if that unit isn't going to be ready right away. So that's sort of it in a nutshell. Are there any questions? Does anyone, if you have a question, you can write it into the box to the right of the screen where you see me, and I will address it now. If you don't think of it now and think of it later, that's totally fine. Happy to respond. You can email me directly at david@sebhousing.com, and be happy to get you whatever information you're looking for. So I'm going to just kind of sit tight here for a minute and see if anyone has a question. If not, I will sign off, and we will be here if you have questions. Okay, so I don't think there are any questions, but for those of you who were able to join, appreciate it. Thank you, and good luck, and stay safe out there, and have a nice evening. Thanks a lot. Good night.